In today's video, we're going to be taking a new enchantment from Lord of the Rings into Modern. This is a 2-drop that enters the battlefield with a counter for each creature you control. And at the beginning of your end step, you remove a counter and draw a card. And if there are no more counters on it, you sacrifice it and gain 4 life. And in a deck like Human, this is a deck that is known for getting onto the battlefield quickly, but having no good late game engines. So when looking at our list, we were playing some extra 1-drops like Avacyn's Pilgrim and Esper Sentinel so that we can power out Dawn with 3 to 4 counters on it, getting us a free card every turn. And with this in addition to Adeline, which is a great way to produce tokens in a human shell, it'll be very easy to abuse this new card. So we're going to be taking this sweet humans list through a League of Modern to see how powerful this new enchantment is. Match 1, we're on the play, and hand's a little land heavy, but we'll keep. Opponent's on a Mold of 5 and reveals Chancellor the Tangled. So we'll go turn 1 Courtyard, naming Human, and play out a Hierarch. Opponent goes turn 1 Botanical Sanctum into a Summoner's Pact, which picks up an Allosaurus Rider. They cast that out, exiling 2 green cards, and cast a Neoform. They draw 14 cards with Gristlebrand, going down to 6. And opponent doesn't find anything, so let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 2 Aether Vials, 4 Esper Sentinels, and 3 Dawns for 3 Dismember, Archon of Emeria, Anointed Peacekeeper, and Meddling Mage. Game 2, we hit the mull our 7, and our 6 has no interaction, so we're gonna mull again. And we'll end up keeping our 5 here, putting back a Mana Confluence and an Unclaimed Territory. An opponent's on a mull to 4 and reveals 2 Chancellors, and they go turn 1 Sanctum. We top deck a Vanguard, we'll play our land, and cast out a Hierarch. They go Waterlogged Grove, we top deck a Vial, we'll play out another land, cast out our Vial, and then cast out our Vanguard. Opponent casts out a Harvest, finding a Fading Hope, and we draw Thalia's Lieutenant, and we'll cast that out, and then we'll attack in for 5. And they cast Fading Hope, bouncing our Vanguard. Opponent plays out a Genstone Mine, and we find a Jarina. We'll cast out our General Kudro, and then we'll Vial in our Vanguard. An opponent has another Fading Hope, bouncing our Thalia's Lieutenant, and still in response, they crack their Grove, and we'll still put in our Vanguard. Nothing from the opponent, we take up our Vial, we top deck a Dismember, and we'll cast out our Lieutenant, and then we'll attack in for 13. And opponent scoops him up. Let's get into match number 2. Match 2, we are on the draw, and hand looks great. Opponent goes turn 1 Mountain into a Ragavan, and we top deck a Cavern, we'll play that out, and then we'll cast out a Sentinel. Opponent casts out a Galvanic Blast, exiling our Sentinel, and paying the 1. And then Ragavan connects, exiling our Thalia's Lieutenant, and then they cast out a DRC. We draw Plains, we'll play that out, cast out our Champion, and then cast out our Noble. They cast out a Bauble, surveilling with their DRC, and then they attack in with Ragavan, and we will not block. Then they cast out a Conduit, and sack their Bauble, looking at our top. And we top deck a Hierarch, we'll play out our Hierarch, then play out our Territory, and cast out a Reflector Mage, bouncing their DRC, and we'll attack in for 6. They bolt our Reflector Mage and attack in with Ragavan. Again, we will not block, and they grab a Sentinel, and then cast out a One Ring, and then cast out a Manifold Key. We draw a Territory, we'll play out our Canopy and crack it right away, finding an Esper Sentinel. We will cast that out, and then we'll cast out a Thalia's Lieutenant. And I believe they get protection, but we'll attack in with the Hierarch just in case. Yeah, and they take no damage, just double checking though. They draw 2 off of the One Ring, and they draw 3, this is pretty sweet. Then they play out a Mountain, cast out a DRC, cast out another DRC, and then cast out a Renin 6. But we get to draw a card, and then they down tick, killing our Thalia's Lieutenant, and we draw a Copper Code Vanguard. So we'll play that out, then we'll play out our lands, and we'll attack in with our Champion, and they chump block with one of their DRCs, and on our end step, they use Power Conduit to remove a counter from the One Ring. Then they take 2 off of the One Ring, going down to 6. Then they draw 3 off of the One Ring, and then untap it with their Manifold Key, drawing 4. Then they remove a counter off the One Ring with their Power Conduit, and attack in for 5. Then they down tick with Renin 6, putting us down to 8. Then cast a Galvanic Blast, targeting us, dealing 4, and then they cast a Lightning Bolt on us, putting us down to 1, and then they cast another Renin 6, which means that they have lethal, so we'll scoop it up and get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out our Copper Code Vanguards and 2 Avacyn Pilgrims for Archon of Emeria, Dawn of a New Age, Anointed Peacekeepers, and a Sanctifier. Game 2, our 7 just has 1 land, so we got a mull. And our 6 is a little light on creatures, but I think we got to keep this, and we'll put back a Plains. We'll lead on turn 1 Cavern, and then play out our Esper Sentinel. It goes turn 1 Mountain into a Ragavan, and we draw another land for turn. We'll play out our Mana Confluence and cast out our Dawn of a New Age, and we top deck a Peacekeeper. They shock in a Stomping Ground and cast a Galvanic Blast on our Esper Sentinel, and then attack in with Ragavan. Oh, they take a Vial off of us, and they do not cast it. Then we top deck an Archon. We'll play out our Courtyard and cast out our Peacekeeper, and we have the name Lightning Bolt. They play out a Saga, and then cast a Bolt for 3 mana, killing our Peacekeeper. Then Ragavan connects for 2 and makes a Treasure, and we top deck an Aether Vial, so we'll play that. Then play our Canopy and cast out an Archon. They play out a Pirate Spellbomb, and then play out out a Bloodstained Mire, and we top deck a Reflector Mage. So we'll cast out our General Kudro, and we'll exile their land from their graveyard, and then we'll attack in for 2. And on our end step, they make a Construct. And in their upkeep, they make another Construct, picking up a Shadow Spear, and they equip it to their Construct, attacking in for 5, and we have to take it. And we draw another Kudro. We'll attack in with the team, and they block with a Construct, which means that we can cast out a Reflector Mage, and we'll bounce their Construct, which kills both of them. Opponent equips Ragavan with their Shadow Spear and attacks in, and we will block with our Reflector Mage. And then they cast out a Written 6, ticking up on their Saga and playing it out for turn. We draw a Clearing, we will crack a Canopy, find another Archon, and then we'll attack them, and then we'll play out another Archon. They cast out a DRC, then they tick up with their Wren, and in response, we'll vial in a Kudro, and we'll exile the Bloodstained Mire. And we top deck a Dawn, so we're going to crack a Clearing, finding a Peacekeeper, and we'll vial that in. Oh my god, and they did not do anything in response, which means we can name Urza Saga, and we'll exile a Ragavan, and then cast out a Dawn. And then we'll attack Written 6 with 2 creatures, trying to kill it. And Written falls. And on the end step, we draw a card, finding an Adeline, and they find a Mana Vault key, and then they use a Mana Vault key to give their DRC unblockable, and they even have a Galvanic Blast. And then they attack in for 4, and we cannot block, so opponent has us. Let's get on to match number 3. Match 3, we are on the draw and hand looks fine. And for some reason, our opponent made us go first. I did not realize. Oh, and our opponent is on the rack, so that makes sense. This was definitely a tactical play. We'll go turn 1 Territory, and we'll cast out our Aether Vial. Opponent plays out a Saga into a Dothi, and we draw a land for turn. So we'll play that out and cast out our Sanctifier. Opponent plays out Blackleaf Cliffs and attacks us for 3. And on their end step, we'll activate Vial, putting in a Hierarch, and we top deck another Hierarch, and we're going to cast out our Adeline. And then we'll attack in with our Sanctifier, getting an Exalted trigger. And they go to block our human tokens, so we're going to vial in our Vanguard, which means that this will trade off with the Construct token. And in their main phase, they float a mana off Saga, finding a Shadow Spear. Opponent Fatal pushes, killing our Vanguard, and then casts a Dreadbore, killing our Adeline. And they attack in for 3. And we top deck a Champion, so we'll play that out. And then we'll play out a Hierarch, and then we'll attack in for 4 with our Sanctifier. Opponent plays out another Saga, then casts another Dothi, and then they equip a Dothi with a Shadow Spear and attack in for 4. So we have to activate Vial and Reflector Mage this Dothi. And opponent scoops it up. Honestly, a little surprised by that scoop, but let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to trim our Vials for Dawn of the New Age, Sanctifier, and 2 Peacekeepers. Game 2, we are on the play, and I guess we'll keep this because it is a turn 2 Adeline. Oh wait, no, we're on the draw. Hand's still fine. Opponent goes turn 1 Swamp into Inquisition, which takes our Avacyn Pilgrim, and we top deck up Anointed Peacekeeper. We'll play out a Cavern, they shock in a Blood Crypt, and then cast another Inquisition, and they end up taking a Peacekeeper. And we top deck another Kudro, so we'll play Unclaimed Territory. And on our end step, they cast a Funeral Charm, so we'll discard a Kudro. They play out a Swamp Passing, and we draw a Jarina, so we'll play out a Horizon Canopy into an Adeline. And on our end step, they cast a K Command, we'll discard our land and take 2 damage. Then they cast a Thoughtseize, which takes our General Kudro, and then they Dreadbore our Adeline. And we top deck a Lieutenant, but we're going to play out our Jarina. And when it enters, we exile their yard. Opponent casts another K Command, killing our Jarina and making a discard. And we top deck a Plains, and then they play out a Rack. And on their end step, we will crack our Canopy, drawing another land, and then we'll take 2 from the rack. Oh, never mind, they have a Funeral Charm, so we'll take 3 from the rack, discarding our land. And we top deck a Noble Hierarch, and we're going to hold this. And opponent casts out a Dothi. We take 2 off the rack, and then we top deck a Champion. They play out an Urborg and attack in for 3. And then we top deck a Sentinel. And I think we're just in the Abyss here. They attack in for another 3. And we top deck a Lieutenant. And yep, we have no outs here. The rack and Dothi are just too good, so let's get into game 3. Game 3, our hand's a little risky, but we'll keep. We'll go turn 1 Courtyard into a Hierarch. And opponent goes turn 1 Thoughtseize, taking our Sanctifier. And we top deck a Lieutenant, so we'll play out a Pilgrim into another Pilgrim. Opponent plays out a Swamp, casting a Wrench Mine, so we'll discard Thalia and a Jarina. Oh, and we top deck a Dawn, so good. So we'll play out a Thalia's Lieutenant, and then we'll cast out our Dawn. And on the end step, we draw Unclaimed Territory. Then opponent casts a Kolaghan's Command, killing our Pilgrim and making us discard. And we top deck a Reflector Mage, and I guess we're going to cast it out, bouncing nothing and pumping our Lieutenant, and then we'll attack in for 3. And opponent's down to 14. And on our end step, we draw a Sentinel. They play out a Swamp into an Inquisition, taking our Sentinel, then cast a Liliana, and they down tick and we'll sacrifice our Pilgrim. And we find another Dawn. We'll cast that out, and then we'll attack them for 2 and kill their Lily. And on the end step, we get to draw 2 cards. They play out a Saga into a Voidwalker, and we draw another Lieutenant, so we will slam that, and then we'll attack in for 7. And opponent scoops it up. Let's get on to match number 4. Match 4 on the play, and hand looks good. We're going to lead on turn 1 Courtyard into an Esper Sentinel. Opponent goes turn 1 Emiria Sky Ruin. We find another Courtyard. We'll play out another Sentinel into a Cavernous Souls, and then we'll play out our Pilgrim, then attack in for 1. Opponent goes Plains into a Wall of Omens. No! Ooh, we top deck a Reflector Mage. I'll play out a Canopy into a General Kudro, and then we'll attack in with the team, and they block our Pilgrim, taking 4. They play out a Field Rune into a Flicker Wisp. We top deck a Plains. We'll play out our Plains into a Reflector Mage, and we'll bounce their Flicker Wisp, and then we'll attack in with the team. And the opponent takes 6, going down to 9. Opponent plays a Plains and use Field Rune on our Cavern, and we don't have any basics to find. And then they play out Ambitious Farmhand. Oh, we top deck a Lieutenant. We will slam that, and opponent scoops them up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 3 Pilgrims, a Coppercoat Vanguard for Dawn of a New Age, and 3 Dismember. Game 2, our hand's a little land heavy, but we'll keep. Opponent goes turn 1 Plains, and we top deck a Jarina. We'll play at our Unclaimed Territory into an Aether Vial. Opponent plays out a Demolition Field into a Marsh, destroying our Aether Vial. And we top deck a Adeline. We'll play out our Canopy, and then cast out 2 Sentinels, and then we'll pass back. And opponent uses their Demolition Field. Of course, we found our Plains, so we cannot search. We top deck a Vanguard. We'll play out our Plains, and then cast our Vanguard, and attack in for 4. They play a Plains into a Skyclave, taking out our Coppercoat. And then we top deck a Reflector Mage. Sadly, cannot cast that though, so we'll cast out Adeline, and we will not attack. Opponent plays a field and passes back. We find another Canopy, we'll attack in, and Adeline triggers, making a 1/1. And they do have a Solitude, exiling our Adeline, and then they will block our human token. So we'll crack a Canopy and see if we can find something. And we find a champion. Yep, we're just too far behind at this point. We'll just scoop it up and get into game number 3. Game 3, our starter is amazing, and we'll go turn 1 Territory into an Aether Vial, and opponent goes turn 1 Emiria. We take up our Vial and draw a Mana Confluence. We'll play out our Clearing, cast out our Champion, and then cast out an Esper Sentinel. They play out a Plains into a Wall of Omens, and on their end step, we'll activate Vial, putting in our Hierarch and pumping the Champion. We top deck another land, we'll crack our Clearing, finding a Lieutenant, and we'll attack in with the team. And they block our Sentinel, and we'll activate our Vial, putting in a Lieutenant, which pumps our team and pumps the Champion. And opponent takes 6, going down to 14, and then we'll play out our Cavern. Opponent plays out a Plains, and then cast a March, targeting our Aether Vial, and we draw a Sentinel, and then they cast another March, exiling an Ambitious Farmhand from hand to kill our Champion. We draw a land, we'll play that, cast out our Esper Sentinel, growing our Thalia's Lieutenant, and then we'll cast out our Thalia's Lieutenant, which pumps the team, and then we'll attack in with everything. And they block like this, taking 6. Opponent plays a Plains, passing, and we top deck a Reflector Mage, and we'll play that out. We'll bounce their Wall of Omens and pump our Lieutenants. And they have an Ephemerate, and they pay for one of the Sentinels, but the other one draws a card. Finding a Dawn, it's a great draw. And if we attack in with everything and they don't have a Solitude, we do win, so we will attack in with the team. And opponent scoops it up. Let's get on to match number 5. Match 5, we're on the draw, and hand looks great. Opponent goes turn 1 Verdant. We top deck a Vial. We'll play out our Plains and cast our Vial. Opponent plays out a Forest, doing nothing again. We top deck a Cavern. We'll play 1 out, and then we'll play out a Champion of the Parish into our Esper Sentinel. And we're not going to activate Vial to play this out to scare the opponent. And in response, our opponent stomps our Champion of the Parish. They play out a tap Stomping Ground, and we top deck our Reflector Mage. We'll activate our Vial, put it in our Thalia's Lieutenant, and then we'll cast out our Dawn, and that resolves. Then we'll play out our Cavern and attack in for 2. And on our end step, we draw a land. We'll cast out a Tireless Tracker into a tap Stomping Ground, getting a Clue token. We draw an Esper Sentinel, we'll play that out into our Courtyard, and then we'll cast our Reflector Mage, bouncing the Tireless Tracker, putting a +1/+1 counter on our Thalia's Lieutenant, and then we'll attack in for 5. And on our end step, we draw a card and gain 4 life, finding a Thalia's Lieutenant. Opponent casts out a Spyro, discarding a Bolt and a Boseiju. Then they play out a tap Stomping Ground, and on their end step, we'll Vial in our Reflector Mage, and we'll bounce their Spyro to hand. Oh my, we top deck a Dawn. So we'll play out our Lieutenant, pumping our team, and then we'll cast out our Dawn, and we'll attack in with the team. And opponent scoops it up. Let's get into sideboarding. We'll take out 3 Pilgrims for Anointed Peacekeeper, Sanctifier, and a Dawn of the New Age. Game 2, our starter looks quite strong. Opponent goes turn 1 Mountain into a Ragavan. We top deck a Dawn. We'll play out our Territory into a Sentinel. Opponent goes straight to combat, and we will trade. Then they play out a Forest into another Ragavan. We top deck a land. We'll play out our Clearing into a Vanguard. They attack in with Ragavan, and we will trade once again. Then they play out a Arbor Elf. We top deck a Champion. We'll play out our Confluence. Play out our Champion into our Thalia's Lieutenant. Opponent untaps and casts out a Clothis. And we top deck another Adeline, so we'll cast one of them out, which pumps both our Champion and our Thalia's Lieutenant. And then we'll attack in. Adeline triggers, giving us a 1/1, pumping both of our Thalia's Lieutenant and our Champion. And they take 9 damage. On their upkeep, they exile our Coppercoat code, gaining 2 and draining us for 2. And opponent scoops it up. We end up getting a nice 4-1. Overall, I do think Dawn was quite powerful. I think 4 is a little too much in the list, but at least one main was very good. We did only lose to Spike, which, you know, whatever, that's okay. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.